Welcome to 7.5, product to sum and sum to product formulas. Now it all depends on how it is that you have these set up. So we put them on each of the problems so we can choose. Let's go to the next slide. And so our first problems here, we have a product of sine u times cosine v equals the formula. And then we have 4 of these formulas. So you have to match up for number 1, number 2, which one of these you're going to use. So I'll just draw a line for number 1. As you can see, we have sine times sine. So that is going to be number 4 here. All right, so all we do is we start out by saying 1/2, and then it is the cosine of 7t minus t, and that's minus the cosine of 7t plus t. And then we just combine everything the best we can. 7t minus t is 6t, minus the cosine of 7t plus t is 8t. And then we just have to distribute the 1/2. Be careful not to put the 1/2 on the angle. Don't apply that to the angle. So this is 1/2 cosine of 6t minus 1/2 cosine of 8t. Now you don't know what t is yet. This is just simplifying, going from a product to a sum. In this case, it'd be a difference. All right, number 2, we'll go faster after this slide. We have sine times cosine. All right, so that's number 1 here. So you say 1/2 the sine of the first plus the second, so that's negative 4x plus 8x, and then a plus sign, and then it's the sign of the difference of the two. So negative 4x minus 8x. And we simplify further. That's the sine of 4x plus the sine of negative 12x. And we distribute the 1/2, and we get the sine of 4x, 1/2 times that, plus 1/2 times the sine of negative 12x. Again, don't divide, telling you not to do it as I was writing it down. Negative 12x there. So don't divide the angle by the 1/2. Okay, let's move on, go a little faster. We have cosine times cosine, that is number 3 here. So that is 1/2 cosine of the 2 added together, 6u plus negative 4u. And the next slide, we'll just go even faster. Plus the cosine of u minus v. That would be 6u minus a negative 4u. Don't forget the negative there. So it's 1/2. I'll combine this step, cosine of 2u plus 1/2 cosine of 10u, change. All right, number 4 is cosine times sine, that's number 2. So again, 1/2 times the sine of the addition of those two, that'd be 2t plus 6t, and minus the sine of the difference. Make that a little nicer. 2t minus 6t. All right, so what do we have? Let's put these together. This is 1/2 sine of 8t minus 1/2 sine of negative 4t. And on this, the negative of your sine can go out. So really, I think we forgot to do this on the first problem. The negative on the sine can go out in front. So plus 1/2 sine of 4t. So knowing your sines and cosines, remember the negative on a cosine doesn't make any difference, but the negative on the sine can be put in front or on the angle. All right, so that should be your answer. Number 5, let's go faster. Sine times cosine, that's number 1. So you have 2 times 1/2, the whole thing, of the addition of the sines. 5 theta and 3 theta is 8 theta, plus the subtraction of the sines. 5 theta minus 3 theta is 2 theta. So 2 times 1/2 is 1, so our answer should be sine of 8 theta plus sine of 2 theta. And then sine times sine, that's number 4. So 2 times 1/2 again, which that's going to be gone. And we have the cosines of the first minus the second is 2 theta, minus the cosine of the first plus the second, 12 theta. So it's just cosine of 2 theta minus the cosine of 12 theta. All right. Cosine times sine, that's number 2. So 3 times 1/2. And then you're going to have the addition of the signs. So 3x minus the subtraction of them. 1 minus 2 is negative x. So remember, we're going to put that in front. And this is 3/2 that is going to be distributed through. So 3/2 times the sine of 3x. This will be a plus 3/2 the sine of x. Number 8, cosine times cosine. Number 3. So this is 5 times 1/2. And you have the addition of the cosines. So that's 9u. Plus the subtraction. So negative u. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. And it doesn't really matter, so we're just going to take that negative off. So this will be 5/2 distributed through, so cosine of 9u plus 5/2 times the cosine of u, because we don't need that negative. Okay, express as a product. All right, so now we're going backwards. Now we got to see which one we're doing. Addition, sine addition would be number 1. So this is going to be 2 sine of a plus b, so that's 6 theta over 2, plus the cosine, not plus, that will be multiplied times the cosine of a minus b, or negative 2 theta over 2. So what do we really have here? 2 sine of 3 theta cosine of negative theta, which the negative doesn't mean anything, so it's just cosine of theta. Number 10, sine minus sine, this will be number 2. So 2 cosine of a plus b, 10 theta over 2, times the sine of a minus b. So 2 minus 8 is negative 6 theta over 2. So we're going to put that negative all the way out in front here, so it'll be a negative 2 cosine of 5 theta sine of 3 theta. All right. Number 11, cosine minus cosine. This will be number 4. So negative 2 sine of both of those added together, 8x over 2, and times the sine of the difference, 2x over 2. So negative 2 sine of 4x times the sine of x. Number 12, cosine plus cosine would be number 3. So 2 times the cosine of the 2 added together, that would be 11t over 2, times the cosine of the difference, that would be negative 1t over 2, but the negative doesn't matter, so we'll just do t over 2. That's the same thing as 1/2 t. You can write it like this. 11/2 t and the cosine of 1/2 t. Remember, those are the exact same things. All right. Sine minus sine. So we go to number 2 here. So 2 cosine of the 2 added together, 12t over 2 is 60. We're going to skip a step. Times the sine of the difference. 3 minus 9 is negative 6. T over 2 is negative 3t. So I'll put the negative out in front. And that is the answer. 14 is cosine minus cosine. Again, we're going to use this. Negative 2 times the sine of the 2 added together. 3 plus 5 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4 theta. Times the sine of the difference. 3 minus 5 is negative 2 theta over 2. So the negative is going to make this a positive. And 2 theta over 2 is just theta. Okay? So those are the answers for 13 and 14. 15, cosine plus cosine. So we're at number 3 here. So 2 cosine of the 2 added together. 1 plus 2 is 3, so 3x over 2. Times the cosine of the difference. 1 minus 2 is negative. So the negative doesn't mean anything on the angle of cosine. So the negative 1x, or x, divided by 2. Again, that's the same thing as saying this. Always remember that the fractions can be out in front. Okay? And 16, sine plus sine. That's back to number 1. So 2 times the sine of the 2 added together, 10t over 2 is 5t. times the cosine of the 2 subtracted. 8 minus 2 is 6t over 2 is 3t. Now let's skip to number 25. Now we're going to express this as a sum. So now we have sine times cosine. So it's good to have your formulas with you. Sine times cosine, this would be the same thing as number 1 here. So we're going to put number 1 down. So that's 1/2 times the sine of the first plus the last. So ax plus bx. Okay, we're going to write, well, I'll write it out first. Ax plus bx. All right, we're probably going to factor out the x in front of that, but let's just write this out first. Plus the sine of u minus b. So the first minus the second. Ax minus bx. All right, so let's distribute the 1/2 and also factor out an x. But it doesn't go in front of the sine. Don't put it in front of the sine. It just goes in front of the angle. So this is going to be 1/2 the sine of x times a plus b plus 1/2 times the sine of x times a minus b. Those are the same things. All right, now we have cosine times cosine. That is number 3. So let's write that formula, 1/2. And that's going to be cosine of u plus b, au plus bu. So au plus bu. Plus the cosine of au minus bu. And again, you're going to factor out that u and distribute the 1/2. So this is 1/2 cosine of u, and that's a plus b, plus 1/2 cosine of u, a minus b. And that's your answer. So we're going to do this again. Now we're going to put sum to product. We're going to add the product ones on this. So let's manipulate this stuff. I'll put the product formulas back on here. All right, so we're doing sine plus sine. So we're going to do number 1 here. So this is 2 times the sine of the a plus the b. That's 8t over 2 is 4t. All right, times the cosine of a minus b. So 5 minus 3 is 2t over 2, which is t, equals 0. Now it says find the solutions to the equation. All right, so that just means, hey, now you should be able to put this stuff together and figure out what the answer is. Okay? So we treat this like a normal equation. We have 3 things multiplied by each other. 2 times the sine of 4t times the cosine of t equals 0. So we divide off the coefficient of 2, and we're left with sine of 4t times the cosine of t equals 0. So one of these has to be equal to 0. So either the sine of 4t equals 0 or the cosine of t equals 0. All right, so that means the sine of some angle equals 0. Well, where does the sine equal 0? Sine equals 0 at 0 and pi. So that means this angle must equal pi somehow. All right, and every pi, including 0, so pi times n. So now to solve for t, we divide by 4. So t is equal to pi over 4 times n. Now the cosine of t, again, where does the cosine of an angle equal 0? At pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So we say pi over 2 plus pi, and remember that's what in the world? That is pi n. Every pi added to the pi over 2. Okay, gets us to what we need. 3 pi over 2 and then back to pi over 2. And that's what makes it equal 0. So t equals pi over 2 plus pi n. But here's the thing. The answer is just pi over 4n. Because pi over 4 gets us to pi over 2. If we add pi over 4 plus pi over 4, it gets us to pi over 2. Okay, so every pi over 4 is going to hit everything. So the answer should be pi over 4 times n. Okay, now sine plus sine. Again, the exact same thing. So 2 sine of t plus 3t is 4t. 4t over 2 is 2t. Times the cosine of a minus b. So 1t minus 3t is negative 2t. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2t over 2. Negative 2t over 2. It's going to give us a negative t, but the negative doesn't matter on cosine. All right. So we have equal to sine of 2t. So let's subtract the sine of 2t from both sides. Be careful, you can't subtract it from this group here, okay? You have to subtract it from the total. So here's what it looks like. 2 times the sine of 2t cosine of t minus the sine of 2t. Now what can we do? We can factor out a sine of 2t. So we factor out a sine of 2t. We get 2 cosine of t minus 1 equals 0. All right, so here you have two things multiplied together equals 0. So where does the sine of 2t equal 0? And remember, where is the sine of any angle equal to 0? The sine equals 0 at 0 and pi. So again, this would be pi n. All right, and then we divide off the 2 from the t, and we get pi over 2 times n. All right, and then we check out 2 cosine of t equals 1. We're going to add the 1 over there and divide off the 2. So cosine of t equals 1/2. Where does the cosine of any angle equal 1/2? So the cosine is 1/2 at pi over 3 plus 2 pi n, right? And also 5 pi over 3 plus 2 pi n. And those are your final answers there. Okay, same thing here. Let's put the formulas up. All right, so now we have cosine equals cosine. So we're going to move this over the other side and get cosine of x minus cosine of 3x equals 0. So we'll be using number 4's formula. So negative 2 times the sine of the 2 added together divided by 2. So 1 plus 3 is 4, divided by 2 is 2, times the sine of 1 minus 3 is negative 2 over 2. So that's just x. And the negative that you had there was going to go out in front. Okay, so again, we divide off the 2, the coefficient. We get sine of 2x times the sine of x equals 0. So what did I do there? I divided everything by 2. That coefficient goes out. And 0 over anything is 0. So now we have sine of 2x times the sine of x. So sine of 2x either equals 0 or the sine of x equals 0. So again, where does the sine of any value equal 0? Sine equals 0 at 0 and pi times n. So now we divide off the 2, and we get x equals pi over 2 times n. Now the next one, where does the sine of x equal 0? Again, at pi n. So x equals pi n. So you have pi over 2 times n, which also includes pi n. So the real answer is just pi over 2 times n. 30. Cosine minus cosine. Again, it's number 4. So negative 2 times the sine of 4 and 3 is 7 over 2. And the sine of 4 minus 3 is 1 over 2. And now we just solve. So divide off the negative 2, and we have sine of 7/2 x times the sine of 1/2 x equals 0. So again, where does any sine equal 0? Sine of any degree equals 0 would be at, again, pi n. So 7/2 x equals pi n. We're going to multiply by 2/7. And we get x equals 2 pi over 7n. And the same thing here, 1/2 x. Where does sine equal 0? Again, at pi n. Multiplied by 2. So x equals 2 pi n. So those should be your two answers. 31. Let's rearrange a little bit here. So we, before we move this cosine over, we should go ahead and do this cosine plus cosine, which is number 3. All right, so 2 cosine of 3 plus 8 is 3 plus 5 is 8x over 2 is 4x, times the cosine of 3 minus 5 is negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. But again, the negative on the angle doesn't mean anything for cosine. Equals cosine of x. So now we'll move the cosine over. So you get 2 cosine of 4x cosine of x minus cosine of x. So we divide out a cosine of x, factor it out. Oops. And we get 2 cosine of 4x minus 1. So either the cosine of x equals 0, or 2 cosine of 4x minus 1 equals 0. So where does the cosine of x equal 0? Cosine of 0 is pi over 2. So this is x equals pi over 2 times n, right? Every pi over 2. Oh, I'm sorry, plus pi. Plus pi n. All right, pi over 2 and then 3 pi over 2. Now, the next one, we're going to add 1 over and divide off the 2. So cosine of 4x equals 1/2. So where does the cosine equal 1/2? Okay, cosine of that angle equals 1/2 at pi over 3 plus 2 pi. It also equals it at 5 pi over 3. Okay, so now we divide everything by 4. And pi over 3 over 4 is the same thing as pi over 3 times 1/4. So pi over 12 plus 1/2 pi. And then 5 pi over 3 would be 5 pi over 12 plus 1/2 pi. So a lot of weird answers there. But this is all heading towards other things. So let's add cosine over there. Cosine of 3x plus cosine of 6x equals 0. So now we're doing cosine plus cosine again. This is number 3. So 2 cosine of 3 plus 6 is 9x over 2 times the cosine of 3 minus 6 is negative 3x over 2, or 3 halves x. The negative doesn't matter for the cosine. Divide off the 2, so the cosine of 9 halves x equals 0, or the cosine of 3 halves x equals 0. So the cosine equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. All right, so we're going to multiply everything by 2/9. Everything. So 2/9 times pi over 2 plus 2/9 times pi times n gives me pi over 9 plus 2 pi over 9 n. Same thing on this one. Cosine equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. So we're going to multiply everything by 2/3. So 2/3 times pi over 2 plus 2/3 times pi n. So we have pi over 3 plus 2 pi over 3 n. And those should be your answers for number 32. All right, let's go to the next one. And we'll move this stuff around a little bit. All right, so number 33 is sine minus sine. So we're going to use number 2 here. So this is 2 cosine of 2 plus 5 is 7 over 2. 7 halves x. And then we have the sine of 2 minus 5 is negative 3x over 2. So 3 halves x, and put the negative out in front, equals 0. Divide off the negative 2, it doesn't matter. 0 over negative 2 is 0. So now you have the cosine of 7 halves x equals 0, or the sine of 3 halves x equals 0. All right, so where does the cosine equal 0? Cosine equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. Multiply everything by 2/7. So we get pi over 7 plus 2 pi over 7 n. And where does the sine of x equal 0? Oops, sine of x equals, the sine equals 0 at pi n, every pi. So we multiply by 2/3. So x is also equal to 2 pi over 3 n. Sine minus sine, again, we won't mess with this until we deal with this right here. Sine minus sine is going to be number 2 again. So that's 2 cosine of 5 plus 1 is 6 over 2 is 3. And 5 minus 1 is 4 over 2 is 2. And then we have the cosine of 3x here. So we subtract that. 2 cosine of 3x sine of 2x minus 2 cosine of 3x. So we're going to factor out the 2 cosine of 3x, and that leaves us with the sine of 2x minus 1 inside. Okay, so either 2 cosine of 3x equals 0, or the sine of 2x minus 1 equals 0. All right, so divide off the 2, and cosine of 3x equals 0. So where does the cosine equal 0? Cosine, again, equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. Divide everything by 3, and x equals pi over 6 plus pi over 3n. Now, sine of 2x minus 1, add 1. You get the sine of 2x equals 1. All right, so now, where does the sine equal 1? Sine equals 1 only at pi over 2 plus 2 pi n. So now we're going to divide everything by 2. X equals pi over 4 plus pi n. Those are your answers. Okay, shown in figures a graph of the function, okay, from 0 to 2 pi. Use a sum to product formula to help you find the x-intercepts. All right, so let's put the sum to product formulas up here to the right. All right, so it wants us to use the sum to product formulas to help us find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts is where the equation equals 0. So it's the same thing we've been doing, just understanding that's what it's asking for. So number 35 uses number 3 formula here. So that is 2 cosine of the 1x plus the 3x is 4x over 2 is 2x times the cosine of the difference. So negative 2x over 2 is negative x, and again, the negative doesn't matter in cosine. Now it wants to know where does it equal 0. Okay, so divide off the 2, it doesn't matter. So then you're left with cosine of 2x equals 0, or the cosine of x equals 0. So where does the cosine of x equal 0? Cosine equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. So divide everything by 2, and x equals pi over 4 plus pi over 2n. Okay, and then cosine of x equals 0 again at pi over 2 plus pi n. All right, so those would be your values to figure all this stuff out. So pi over 4 would be the first one here. And then we also have, this is going to be 1 pi here. This is the first pi over 2. And then the second one there, remember the pi over 4 plus pi over 2 gets us to 3 pi over 4. Okay, and then you have this one right here, which is going to give you another pi over 2 plus that, or 2 pi over 4 would be 5 pi over 4. Okay, and your pi over 2 plus pi gets us to 3 pi over 2, which is this one right here. So that's how you find each of those. And then you have this one right here. So that's going to be 5 pi over 4 plus another 2 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. All right, so all I did was take pi over 4 and add pi over 2 to it until I went past the 2 pi. That's all you have to do. And the same thing with the pi over 2. All right, and that's how you got all those. So 3 pi over 4. So we've already done this type of thing before. 5 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4. And then pi over 2 plus pi gets us to pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. those are your answers. All right, number 36, we're using sine minus sine, which is the second formula. So this is 2. Cosine of 4 plus 1 is 5x over 2. Times the sine of 4 minus 1 is 3x over 2. Equals 0. Again, dividing off the 2 doesn't matter. So where does the cosine equal 0? And where does the sine equal 0? So 5x minus 2. Where does cosine equal 0? Equals 0 at pi over 2 plus pi n. And the sine equals 0 at pi, oops, let's put 3x over 2, pi n. All right, let's multiply by 2/5 over here. And it is pi over 5 plus 2 pi over 5 n. And multiply by 2/3 over here. And we get x equals 2 pi over 3 n. So without even looking at the graph, I can do this. Pi over 5 plus 2 pi over 5. So 1 pi over 5 plus 2 pi over 5 is 3 pi over 5. Plus another 2 pi over 5 is 5 pi over 5, or pi. There, we're halfway around. And 5 pi over 5 plus another 2 pi over 5 is 7 pi over 5. Plus another 2 pi over 5 is 9 pi over 5. And if I go one more, I'll be past 2 pi. So those are all the fifths. Now what about the 2/3? So we have 2 pi over 3 plus another 2 pi over 3 gives us 4 pi over 3. And one more will give us 6 pi over 3, or 2 pi. So those are all the x-axis. Let's see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's it. Good job.